I had 90 seconds to keep 4 people from disappearing beneath the Halloran building. I spent the first 60 checking my arithmetic. I have inspected elevators for 26 years, and the counter is normally the dullest number in the trade. Every modern controller records completed trips. Some also record cumulative travel, calculated from encoder pulses at the drive sheave. Maintenance crews use those figures to schedule service. Inspectors like me compare them with the logbook and move on. A pedometer for a box. In 26 years, I had written down thousands of those numbers and forgotten every one of them before leaving the machine room. I will not forget the one I read on the 9th of a wet October morning in the Halloran building downtown, because it was the first number that ever told me a machine had traveled somewhere its building did not contain. The Halloran was not abandoned or condemned. It was 11 working floors of dentists, accountants, a title company, a call center, and a physical therapy clinic, full of people on a wet Tuesday morning. At 9:40, the lobby espresso machine was hissing and coffee was going cold on 100 desks. That ordinary crowd is the reason anyone survived. I had noticed the 5 people gathered at Car 2 before I knew their names. Priyanka Shah and Marisol Vega wore matching visitor badges from the title company and were arguing cheerfully over a stack of closing documents. Terrell Boyd, a call center supervisor built like a linebacker, held the lobby door for an older man with a walnut cane. The older man was Leonard Price, a retired electrical engineer visiting the physical therapy clinic on 9. Beside him stood Owen Bell, a 19-year-old records clerk on his 3rd day at work, trying not to spill coffee on a borrowed suit. They were strangers in the way office buildings manufacture strangers, close enough to share weather, elevators, and the smell of burnt coffee, but not names. Leonard asked Owen whether Car 2 was always that slow. Owen said he did not know. He was new. Marisol pressed the call button twice, and Priyanka told her that pressing it twice did not make the car come faster. Terrell said it did if you believed in it hard enough. They laughed. I passed them on my way to the service stairs and remembered the exchange only because of what happened later. There are 3 passenger cars in the Halloran and a freight in the back. I was doing the annual on Car 2, routine. I'd check the pit, the buffers, the governor, the safeties, the door restrictors, all of it clean, a well-maintained machine. The building's contractor was a good one. Last thing on my sheet before I test ran it was the run counter up in the machine room on 11, mounted on the controller. I climbed up, found the tally, and I wrote down the number, and then I stopped because the number was wrong in a way that took my brain a second to even parse. The controller was a newer smart unit that displayed cumulative travel beside completed runs. Its service screen showed 17 trips since reset. The distance field showed 68,640 feet, exactly 13 miles. The timestamp beside the reset was 08:10 that morning, 90 minutes earlier. The contractor had installed a replacement encoder interface before the building opened, run the car through its acceptance cycle, and zeroed both fields. The handwritten service sheet agreed, 16 test and passenger trips before the one currently in motion. The Halloran shaft measured 142 feet from terminal to terminal. Even if every one of those 17 trips had crossed its full height, which they had not, the maximum possible travel was 2,414 feet, less than half a mile. The controller claimed 68,640. That was an average of just over 4,037 feet per trip, more than 28 complete shaft lengths every time the car moved. I checked the units. Feet, not inches. I checked the reset time against my watch. I checked the trip count against the dispatch log. Then I divided again on the back of my inspection sheet, because the first answer offended every useful thing I knew about the machine. Here is where I lost my 60 seconds, and I'll own it. I did what every trained person does when a number is impossible. I assumed the number was the problem. Faulty encoder. Software glitch counting phantom pulses. A unit's error, meters logged as feet. I stood in that machine room and I chased the number, because 26 years had taught me that machines lie about themselves all the time, and the readout is almost never the reality. I actually smiled at it. I thought, somebody's encoder is chattering, I'll flag it, they'll swap the board again. I put my pen to the sheet to write distance counterfaulty recommender, and that's when I heard it. From down the shaft, through the machine room floor, through the whole steel spine of the building, a sound I have never heard in 26 years, and hope to God I never hear again. Elevators make noise, but they make finite noise. A hum, a whir, the clunk of a contactor, and then they stop, because they arrive. This was the sound of a car running and not arriving. A continuous descending whine, the traction motor spooling, the ropes singing over the sheave right there beside me, faster and faster, and it did not stop. Floor to floor in that building is under 2 seconds of travel. This ran for 4, 5, 6 seconds, still accelerating, and the distance counter on the controller in front of my face was spinning. I watched it spin, the last digits a blur, and I understood all at once, standing in the machine room with my pen in my hand, that the counter was not lying. The counter was the only instrument in the building reporting what the car was doing. 13 miles was not accumulated wear. It was a measurement of distance the shaft did not contain. Whether that distance had appeared between the earlier runs or was being charged against all 17 at once, I could not know. But the last digits were moving now, and car 2 was not empty. I had seen people waiting for it in the lobby before I came upstairs. I did the fastest thing I have ever done, which was hit the emergency stop on the controller, the machine room disconnect, the big red mushroom that kills power to the motor and drops the brake. I slammed it with the heel of my hand, and the whine did not stop. I want to be exact about this because it is the moment the ground went out from under everything I know. When you kill power to a traction elevator, the brake is spring applied. It clamps by default. It needs power to release. No power means the brake grabs the sheave and the car stops. That is physics. That is the whole safety philosophy of the trade. It is the thing I have staked 26 years and other people's lives on. I killed the power. The brake should have grabbed. And through the floor, I could still hear the car running, descending, the rope still singing over the sheave beside me. Except now the sheave was not turning. I was looking right at it. The disconnect had worked. The sheave was stopped. The motor was dead. The brake was clamped. The ropes on the sheave were dead still. And the car was still going down. The car had come off the mechanism. Whatever was happening to it, it was no longer connected to the machine that was supposed to move it or stop it. The counter kept spinning. There was no mechanism left for me to diagnose. I ran. The contractor kept handheld radios, and I had one clipped to my belt. I called the lobby and said, "Clear every landing at car 2. Block the doors. Nobody enters that shaft." Then I left the machine room, took the stairs, and went down 11 floors against the evacuation traffic. From the duration of the descending whine, car 2 had already passed the lobby, the pit, and the physical bottom of its shaft. There were people inside it. Standing beside a dead motor would not help them. The stairwell was full of people already coming down. That's the thing about a full building. An alarm empties it, and the fire alarm had tripped somewhere in the chaos, and I fought against the flow, down, shouting. And I got to the lobby, and the doors of car 2 stood open on the ground floor, and the car was not there. The shaft was open and black, and the singing whine came up out of it from far below, and standing at the open doorway, holding on to the frame, white-faced, was a young woman from the title company named, I learned her name after, everybody's name after. When you nearly die with people, you learn their names. Named Priyanka, and she was holding on to the doorframe because she had one foot on the lobby floor, and she had been halfway into the car when it dropped, had felt the floor fall out from under her front foot, and had thrown herself backward onto the lobby marble, and she was screaming that there were 4 people still inside it. One was her coworker. The others were strangers whose names she had not yet learned. The car had answered the lobby call. Doors opened, 3 of them stepped in, a 4th was stepping in, Priyanka behind. And then it went down, instead of up, and kept going. Here is what saved their lives, and it was not cleverness, and it was not me. It was that a full building is full of people who grab each other. When the car dropped past the lobby, the fourth man stepping in, a big guy from the call center, I'll call him Terrell. Terrell had one hand on the doorframe rail, the way you do, and when the floor left him, he did not fall. He hung, and he had the presence of mind and the sheer animal instinct to swing himself half out. And Priyanka and a second woman behind her grabbed his arm and his belt and his collar, 3 people's hands on one falling man, and they did not let go. They got dragged to the edge of the open shaft on their bellies on the marble, and they did not let go. And they hauled him back onto the lobby floor with his shoes gone, actually pulled off his feet by the wind of the drop. Terrell lived because 4 hands that knew him grabbed him. That is the whole physics that mattered that day. Not the brake, the hands. But 3 were still in the car going down, and the car was below the world. The lobby annunciator still showed car 2 at B1. It never changed, though the counter upstairs was adding hundreds of feet every second. I opened the fire service cabinet and lifted the emergency handset. The line clicked, hissed, and then someone breathed into it. "Halloran Car 2, I said. "My name is Daniel Mercer. I am the elevator inspector. If you can hear me, answer once and tell me how many people are conscious." For 3 seconds there was only a rushing sound. Then a woman said, very carefully, "3 conscious, 1 broken ankle. We are still moving." That was Marisol. I did not know her name yet. She was sitting on the floor with Owen's head against her shoulder and Leonard braced between the handrail and the wall. The car had dropped so abruptly that Owen had landed wrong and folded his left ankle under him. Leonard's cane had struck the ceiling and split along the grain. Marisol had used her belt to bind Owen's ankle to the 2 halves of the cane. Nobody had told her to do it. She had simply seen a problem that could be made smaller and made it smaller. "Are the doors closed?" I asked. "Closed. The floor indicator says basement." "Do not force them. Do not jump. Is the red emergency stop switch pulled?" "Yes. Nothing happened." Behind her, Leonard said, "Ask him why the ceiling is breathing." I heard that through the handset. "What does that mean?" Marisol looked up. She told me later that the fluorescent panel was bowing inward and relaxing every few seconds, not from air pressure, but in time with the bands of darkness outside the door seam. The cab did not feel as if it were falling. It felt stationary while a tremendous structure moved upward around it. Each time the ceiling flexed, the rushing noise became voices for half a second. Lobby conversations, telephones, the espresso machine, fragments of ordinary sounds from floors they had already passed. Owen heard Priyanka shouting his name. Leonard heard his dead wife asking whether he had taken his medication. "The sounds are not people," I said. "Do not answer anything except this handset." It was an instruction based on nothing, but certainty has weight during an emergency. Marisol repeated it to the others as if I had cited a code section. I asked Leonard to inspect the ceiling escape panel without opening it. In modern passenger cars, the panel is locked from the top so occupants cannot climb into a moving hoistway. Leonard felt around its frame and found one corner hanging lower than the others. The impact had bent the latch plate. Through the gap came cold air and the smell of wet concrete. "There is a recovery eye on the car top frame," I told him. "Steel ring near the center crosshead. If rescue crews can reach the roof, that is where they connect. Do not open the hatch yet. If the car is moving through real guide rails, the clearance can kill you." "Are we in real guide rails?" Owen asked. I looked into the black shaft beneath the lobby and watched identical brackets pass through the narrow cone of my flashlight without moving. "I don't know." The handset crackled. The line should have ended at the traveling cable beneath the car. A traveling cable in a 142-foot shaft cannot remain connected to a car thousands of feet below the foundation. Yet their voices were clear enough for me to hear Leonard count the seconds between the ceiling's slow inward breaths. 7 seconds, then 6, then 5. The impossible distance was not merely carrying them away, it was changing around them. I told Marisol to keep the handset open and put it on the floor. I told Leonard to watch the hatch. I told Owen to say something every 30 seconds so we would know he had not gone into shock. Then I handed the lobby end of the phone to Priyanka. Her hands were shaking so badly she needed both of them to hold it, but her voice steadied the moment Marisol answered. "You still owe me lunch," Priyanka said. Marisol laughed once, a sharp, terrified sound. "Then get me out before noon." That was the first connection we maintained. Not rope, not machinery. Just two women speaking through a cable that had become longer than the building. There is no free end of hoist rope waiting in an elevator pit. The ropes are fixed to the car and counterweight and pass over the traction sheave as a system. The city attorney later called what we used a hoist rope because he wanted one familiar noun in the report. It was not. It was a fire department life safety line, 300 feet of low-stretch Kernmantle rope attached to a steel rescue hook rated far beyond any load we intended to place on it. The Halloran's machine room had a certified lifting beam above Car 2's shaft, installed so a disabled car could be raised during major repairs. The beam belonged to the real building. The recovery eye welded to the car top crosshead belonged to the real car. If we could connect those two pieces, I believed the opening would have to acknowledge that the car still had a place in our shaft. That was not engineering. It was a wager about ownership. Fire Lieutenant Annika Foster arrived with Engine 6 while I was still on the emergency phone. I gave her the facts without the theory. Powered machinery isolated, brake applied, car absent below lowest landing, 3 occupants in voice contact, unknown depth, apparent shaft geometry extending beyond foundation. She looked into the open hoistway for 2 seconds and did not waste time asking whether I was joking. "Can we reach the roof?" she asked. "We can see it. Distance is the problem." "Seeing is distance." "Not in there." We entered the pit from the service corridor, clipped to independent fall arrest anchors, and remained above the buffers. Beneath them, the concrete slab I had stood on that morning was gone. Guide rails descended in exact 142-foot repetitions. Each copy ended in another pair of buffers, another access ladder, another oil stain shaped like the one left by my boot. The shaft had not simply grown longer. It was repeating its own measured interior, stacking the building's permitted distance beneath itself. Far below, the roof of Car 2 was visible as a pale square. It should have been smaller than a grain of dust at the distance shown upstairs. Instead, it looked 60 or 70 feet away. Foster's laser rangefinder returned 61.8 feet, then 194, then an error. My steel tape dropped 25 feet and hung straight. The counter added another 400. Depth had split into 3 answers: what the eye saw, what a tool measured, and what the car experienced. Foster built the system. She slung a rescue tripod over the access opening, backed it to the certified lifting beam, installed a progress capture pulley and an inline load cell, then tied the life safety line to the steel hook. Every component had a rating. Every connection was checked by a second firefighter. That mattered to me. The only useful response to an impossible place was to make every choice around it as ordinary and inspectable as possible. We lowered the hook. At 30 feet, it passed the first set of false buffers. At 60, it appeared level with the car roof. Foster paid out another 20 feet. The hook did not descend. It remained suspended several feet above the roof while rope vanished through her gloved hands. "Line count?" I asked. 112 feet out. The hook still looked 60 feet below us. At 180 feet, the load cell twitched to 9 pounds. At 240, it rose to 14. Not contact, just the increasing weight of rope that the shaft admitted. At 290 feet, Foster stopped. 10 feet remained in the bag, nowhere near enough to make a safe tie-off. The hook was still 6 feet above the car. Our first plan failed by 6 visible feet and 12 miles of recorded distance. Upstairs, the counter crossed 70,000. Priyanka relayed a new sound from the cab, metal tapping above the ceiling hatch. Leonard counted 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, pause. Owen said someone was walking on the roof. I could see the roof. Nobody was there. "Do not open the hatch," I told them. The tapping changed. It copied my words in the same rhythm. "Do not open, do not open." Marisol began reciting the names of everyone inside. Marisol Vega, Leonard Price, Owen Bell. She did it every time the false voice spoke. Leonard joined her. Owen's voice came last and weakest, but it came. Foster looked at the remaining rope and said, "We need slack from somewhere." The line had none. The shaft did. I asked the machine room engineer to read the controller distance aloud over the radio. He began at 70,384 feet. I had Foster raise the hook 1 foot. The counter fell to 70,102. She lowered it again. The counter climbed to 70,416. The rescue line was not traveling through the extra distance. It was negotiating it. Each foot we withdrew removed hundreds of feet from the controller. Each foot we surrendered allowed hundreds back. We raised the hook 10 feet. The car roof rose visually perhaps 1 inch, but the counter dropped below 67,000. Then the load cell jumped to 80 pounds, and the rope dragged sideways toward a guide rail bracket that existed in the 3rd repetition of the pit. Foster locked the progress capture. The line sawed against an edge we could not reach. Its sheath began to fuzz. "If that cuts, we're done with this rope," she said. There was no second line long enough, and we had already proved length was not the deciding property. Terrell lay across the barrier at the pit entrance, still shoeless, one heel cut open, holding a flashlight where Foster directed. Priyanka stayed on the phone with Marisol. Building engineer Curtis Hale ran between the pit and machine room with numbers and tools. None of them had been assigned a heroic role. They kept finding one. Hale brought the elevator contractor's rigid retrieval pole, telescoping fiberglass with an insulated shepherd hook meant for recovering dropped tools from a de-energized pit. Extended, it reached 24 feet. We clipped ourselves to a second anchor, leaned no farther than our harnesses allowed, and used the pole to push the rescue line off the false bracket. The bracket moved when the hook touched it. Not bent. Moved. The entire repeated bay rotated a few degrees, as flat as scenery. For an instant I saw its back, unfinished darkness and a grid of pale numbers, all 17, stacked in columns. Then it snapped into alignment. The rope came free. The counter upstairs lost 6,000 feet so quickly that Hale thought the display had failed. The car roof rose to what looked like 40 feet below us. "Now," Foster said, "open their hatch." I took the handset. "Leonard, the panel is going to open inward towards you. Keep everyone clear. Use the broken cane under the bent corner and lever only when I say. Do not put your head or hands through." Understood. "Marisol, keep Owen against the rear wall." "Ready?" Foster lowered the hook. This time every foot paid out brought the car visibly closer. At 20 feet above it, the tapping stopped. At 10, every light in the pit went out, including our battery lamps. Darkness in a shaft is normal. This was not. Our headlamps remained powered. I could see their indicator LEDs glowing green, but no beam left the lenses. Light itself seemed to have been given a distance it could not cross. From the handset came Leonard's count. 3, 2, 1. Metal tore. The roof hatch opened. The cab's emergency light shone upward like a coin at the bottom of black water. A hand emerged, not reaching blindly, but holding the 2 split halves of Leonard's cane lashed together with Marisol's belt. He had made a fork. Foster lowered the hook into it. "Left," I said. 6 inches. Hold." "Leonard, turn the cane clockwise." The hook rotated. It slipped once and struck the roof. The counter jumped from 58,000 to 63,000 in a single second. The car dropped visually 10 feet. Owen screamed. Priyanka nearly lost the handset. "Names," Marisol shouted from below. "Say the names." "Marisol Vega," Leonard said. "Leonard Price. Owen answered through clenched teeth. Owen Bell, Marisol said. Priyanka added hers from the lobby. Terrell added his from the pit door. Then Foster, Hale, and I said ours. It was not a spell. It was a roll call, the oldest practical method for proving who remains present during an emergency. Leonard tried again. The cane fork turned the hook through the recovery eye. Foster lifted 1 inch, the hook seated. The load cell rose to 186 pounds. That number saved us from making a fatal mistake. Car 2, with 3 occupants, weighed thousands. If the line had shown anything near that load, we would have known the car was physically hanging from our rope and the system was inadequate. It did not. The reading fluctuated between 180 and 240 pounds, less than the weight of one large person, far below the rating of the rope, beam, pulley, and anchors. We were not lifting an elevator. We were maintaining a certified connection between two things that belonged together. Foster organized the haul. 2 firefighters on the line, Terrell behind them despite his injured foot, progress capture after every pull. Priyanka stayed with the phone. Hale returned to the controller and read the numbers. 62,800, 61,900, 60,000. Each 12-inch pull returned yards of rope into the bag. The car rose only inches to our eyes. The repeated guide rail bays below began folding into one another without impact, their brackets passing through concrete copies like shuffled cards. At 49,000 feet, the line load climbed to 310 pounds. "Stop," Foster ordered. The load kept climbing after everyone released the haul line. 350, 400. The shaft was pulling back. In the cab, the floor indicator changed from B1 to 9, then 6, then a symbol none of them recognized. The doors flexed inward. From every seam came voices of people who were not in the car, each offering a different instruction. Open the door, cut the line, climb out, let go. One voice used mine. Marisol pulled the emergency handset from the wall and held the receiver against Owen's chest so he could feel the real voice vibrating through it. "The real one comes through the wire," she told him. "Only the wire." The load reached 612 pounds, still within the equipment rating, but no longer the modest connection we had understood. Foster ordered everyone away from the line. The progress capture held. The lifting beam groaned. We needed to know what had changed. Leonard, looking through the open hatch without raising his head above the roofline, saw the problem. A second hook had appeared in the recovery eye beside ours. It was black, shaped like our steel hook, connected to a rope that descended from below the car into the continuing dark. The shaft had copied the rescue system and attached its own claim. There was no way for us to reach it. Owen said, "I can." His ankle was broken and he was 19 years old. He could not stand, but he was the only passenger thin enough to lift through the hatch, while Marisol and Leonard supported him from below. I told him no. Foster told him no. Then the false hook pulled, the load hit 700, and the car dropped another visible foot. "Tell me what to do," Owen said. Foster made the decision, because it was now a rescue choice rather than an elevator choice. She had Marisol loop the cab handrail strap beneath Owen's arms. Leonard braced his good leg. They lifted him only high enough for his shoulders to clear the hatch. His face appeared in our darkness, white with pain, one hand clamped around the recovery eye. The black hook had no gate and no knot. It was a smooth curve gripping the steel ring. Owen used the only tool they had left, the metal buckle from Marisol's belt. He wedged it between hook and eye. The copied rope tightened. The car shuddered. The ceiling began its 5-second inward breath. "When it breathes out," Leonard said, "not in." He had been counting from the beginning. On the next outward flex, the false rope slackened for less than a second. Owen drove the buckle into the gap. Marisol and Leonard pulled him down as the black hook slipped free. It did not fall. It withdrew downward at impossible speed, taking its rope and the copied darkness beneath it. The load cell fell from 731 pounds to 203. Hale shouted over the radio. "Counter just lost 20,000. It's at 38 and falling." We hauled. At 31,000 feet, water began pouring upward from the shaft as rain. Not rising water, rain falling toward the lobby from below. It smelled like the wet October street outside. Terrell covered the pulley with his body while Foster kept the line running. At 22,000, every car call button in the building illuminated at once. At 17,000, the 2 other elevators opened on every floor simultaneously and would not close. The fire alarm stopped. In the sudden quiet, we could hear hundreds of evacuated workers above us calling the names of co-workers and counting who had made it outside. The building was performing its own roll call. At 9,200 feet, the line returned 10 feet for every 6-inch pull. At 4,000, the repeated shafts below collapsed so quickly that their lights became a solid white column. The car roof rose toward us 20 feet away, then 15. The load cell dropped to 0. The hook was still visibly attached. "No tension," Foster said. "We've lost it." Upstairs, the counter stopped at 1,426 feet, almost exactly 10 physical shaft lengths. The car hung below us close enough to see, but it did not rise. The false voices stopped. So did Marisol's handset. For the first time, we had no sound from inside. Priyanka called Marisol's name. Nothing. Terrell leaned over the barrier and shouted into the pit until Foster hauled him back. I put my hand on the rescue line. It was neither taut nor slack. It had no weight at all, as if the portion below the pulley existed only visually. Then Owen's voice came through the radio in Hale's hand, though Owen had no radio. 17 trips, he said. It wants the last one completed. The controller still counted the current movement as trip 17. A normal trip ends when a car arrives in a door zone and the controller receives simultaneous position and lock signals. Car 2 had never arrived. It had been charged distance without destination. I ran to the lobby landing and examined the open doors. Priyanka had pulled herself backward when the car dropped, interrupting the entrance detector. The doors had reopened and remained disabled. I reset nothing. I did not restore power. I manually secured the landing interlock in its inspection position and placed the car call circuit on fire service hold, conditions that told the isolated controller the lobby was a protected destination without commanding motion. "Read it," I told Hale. "Door zone false, landing lock true, car position EUR." The controller clicked. "Car position lobby, I don't know how." The counter began moving again, backward. 1,426, 1,100, 800. The rescue line took weight at 194 pounds. Foster's crew hauled. The car rose through the final copied shaft. The lobby sill vibrated under my hand. 300 feet, 142, the exact physical height of the real shaft. At that number, the machine room encoder came alive, although the motor remained disconnected. The fixed sheave did not turn. One pulse, Hale said, then another. 100 feet, 50, 10. I shouted for everyone to clear the pit and release the haul line. Foster locked the progress capture, and we climbed behind the barrier. Priyanka kept speaking into the dead handset. "You owe me lunch. You owe me lunch." The counter reached 0. Car 2 entered the real pit from below and settled onto both oil buffers, not with a catastrophic crash, but with one enormous controlled compression. The buffers drove to their stops. The tripod skipped 6 inches. The recovery line snapped taut at 238 pounds and held. Dust rolled through the service corridor. Then Marisol answered through the handset. "Make it somewhere expensive," she said. Below the buffers there was only the slab I had inspected that morning. No repeated rails, no copied rescue line, no impossible depth. The foundation had returned. The doors of Car 2, jammed a foot above the lobby floor, we pried open with our hands and a fire axe, and the 3 inside were alive. Bruised, deaf in one ear from the pressure, one with a broken ankle, all 3 convinced they had been falling for more than an hour, when the lobby clocks showed 11 minutes. Alive. All 4 people who had crossed the threshold of that car walked out of the Halloran on their own feet or were carried by the rest of us, and not one of them was lost. Car 2 was removed the following week. I filed it as a catastrophic mechanism failure and required the controller, encoder, ropes, sling, and counter to be destroyed rather than rebuilt or resold. I watched the controller and counter enter the furnace. The Halloran installed a new car in the existing shaft. I have inspected it every year since. Its travel measurements agree with its run log to within normal calibration tolerance. The foundation beneath its buffers is solid. Whatever opened that October closed when we pulled the car back across its boundary, and it has stayed closed. What stays with me is not fear. It is the sight of 6 people across a pit and its landing, hands raw on one line, maintaining a connection that should not have carried anything. A building full of people is not a building full of victims. It is a building full of hands. Whatever opened beneath the Halloran made one mistake. It took the car at 9:40 in the morning, when the place was packed with ordinary people who would grab a stranger's collar and refuse to let go. If it had come at 3 a.m., for one late worker riding alone, there would have been nobody to throw the rope and nobody to pull it. It came in daylight, into a crowd, and the crowd beat it. I still write down the counter number on every inspection. It's still the most boring number in the trade, but now I actually read it. And on every car in every building, before I sign the sheet, I stand in the lobby a minute and I watch the people get on and off, all of them in a hurry, all of them ignoring each other, all of them one hand grab away from saving somebody's life without ever knowing it. And I think, good, stay close, stay many. And I sign the sheet and I go home.